Cana was, and in some places still is, an association of married couples who gather for support and enrichment on a large scale, dinners, presentations, just a social time together too, as well as prayer and learning. Father John O'Sullivan had been here a short time, way back after World War II, I believe, and he started those Cana clubs, and they were still existent and thriving when I was here at Incarnation. I remember we didn't have much money in those years, so we found our own entertainment around these dinners, and one year I had to dress up as George Washington, because the dinner was around the holiday that honored George Washington. So I did not only costume, but some kind of a skit, which is long forgotten by me, and I hope by everybody else, of George Washington. That was our entertainment. We were really hard up, weren't we? And then the groups also, there was a support group for married couples, made up of 4, 5, 6 couples who met in their homes on a regular basis, and each of us priests were chaplains to those groups. So we would visit sometimes the whole meeting, sometimes part of the meeting, and have time together with couples, sharing their successes, their happiness, their love, their challenges, supporting them. And those groups became friends. And we still, believe it or not, there's an old-timers group of Incarnation people with a couple of additions. We screened them very carefully, though, to let them into this group. But we meet monthly for dinner. And that's just a great calling back of what a wonderful support this whole parish was, and how powerful the relationships were that developed from people coming en masse to Sunday Mass and staying around as friends, supporting the dinners, the social events, the school, the religious ed program, people when they were suffering and how the congregation took care of them and their families. When someone had died, the support that rallied around them. There were so many things that happened because of coming together in prayer of Mass, that we went home never forgetting what had happened there. So we continued to bring that presence of Jesus in so many ways to the homes and to the neighborhood and to the community. It was social justice way back then, social action way back then, that formulated and got more and more organized up to this day. Well, it was good. Well, I came from the seminary where we lived. There were 200 of us, 200 and some of us at the seminary. So the community part wasn't any surprise to me. But living with the people I lived with here was just edifying. We were crowded. We each had 2 rooms in that rectory, kind of a living room office, and then a bedroom. I had a bedroom, if you look at the rectory, 2nd floor to the left, which has a porch attached to it. So I was really lucky because I had 3 rooms in good weather. But we got along well. Not perfectly, because there's always little tensions, but we were expected to be here for meals. A day off was arranged if you needed a day off or a time off. You didn't have a day off otherwise. I remember my first weekend here, I had arranged with Monsignor Gormley to go to Illinois to the first Mass of a classmate. So when I got the assignment here, I met with Monsignor Gormley, who was pastor, and said I would like that first weekend off so I could attend this Mass that I've been invited to be part of down in Illinois. And he said, well, that is no problem. So I was walking down the steps of the rectory from the 2nd floor and met Father Cassidy, who was first assistant at that point, who said, I had my suitcase in hand, and he said, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to Illinois for the weekend. And he said, you're going to Illinois on the first weekend in the parish? So you don't do that. And I said, oh, Monsignor Gormley said it was okay. And Father Packer said, I'm the one who's supposed to say it's okay. I'm the first assistant. So we were great friends forever until he died just this past summer, as most of you know. But it was a harmonious rectory with some tensions as new ideas and new customs, new habits among priesthood came in. Like, we didn't always show up for dinner or lunch or breakfast. We'd be going out. And that was a change from the old style of living. And taking an evening off, taking a day off, was not just something you arranged, you kind of expected to do it. And Monsignor Gormley was a wonderful pastor. he was semi-retired here, as most of you will remember, and the first assistant was really doing a lot of the practical work of the pastor. But Monsignor Gormley told us when we started the changes, and I'll always be grateful for his leadership in this area, he said, I don't understand all these changes that are happening. I'm too old. But he said, I want you to understand what you're doing and explain it to the congregation before you do it, so there's no surprises among our people. And I think that wise advice contributed to the smooth transition, relatively smooth transition, that this parish had from the liturgy that we grew up with, of our people of our age, to the liturgy of today. This much more involving of the congregation. So those were good years. I was only here 4 years and a couple months, but they made such an impact in my priesthood and my life. And that's why I come back here to this place, but also to so many people that were part of this place when I was in those formative years. We did have this new program, but it wasn't time off, but it was called the Holy Childhood Program, where we, the sisters and the priests, taught parents whose children were being prepared for First Confession, First Communion. And then the school supported it, the religious education program supported it, but the main education was in the families. And when the parents thought their child was ready for First Confession, First Communion, they invite one of the priests, and we had 4 of us here so we could do this. One of us would be invited to the home for maybe dinner, or maybe for just dessert, or maybe for just a casual visit in a weekend afternoon or something of that sort, to meet with the child in this informal setting where we could talk about what the child had learned and how the child was prepared for those sacraments. So we were eating well. And that's again another time, because people always had nice desserts, because Father was coming. And I gained weight. I don't know about those others. Father Cassidy, he put on a few pounds too, as I recall at first. But at any rate, those were good encounters too, with the relationship between the congregation and the rectory. But otherwise, it was pretty expected that we would be here mostly. And dressed cassock if we were on premises here, black suit and collar if we were out shopping or visiting the homes or whatever.
Wow.
Right. Always remember, 7, 8, 2 9:15s, 2 10:30s, and 2 noons. We had upstairs church and the downstairs church, not the basement church. Cassidy told me that from the start. It's the downstairs church. So what would that be? 6, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 here. And I think we had a Sunday afternoon Mass until we could have a Saturday Mass. And then we had, I believe, 3 Masses over at St. Leonard. We also had, by the way, if you remember, 6 priests come in on weekends. Usually it's Father Paul Marks from St. John's to help with that Mass schedule. He recalled that people, there were no lay ministers in those years. We had lectors, but no Eucharistic ministers. Only the priest or the deacon could administer communion. So Sunday mornings we were quite busy, even though there were a number of us, timing those Masses so that communion, we would be available to help with communion in the upstairs church and the downstairs church, for instance. One would be away over at St. Leonard's, so that cut into those numbers. And Father Paul Marks was always on the phone, so we had to run and get him. Well, my recollection is that we had a 6:30 in the church, a 6:45 in the convent, unless there was not enough priests, and then 8 o'clock, and then a 5:30 in the afternoon. And I'm not sure how often that 5:30 happened. A little foggy there. I'm getting old, I can't remember anything. Then we'd have a funeral, which were pretty regular. And on weekends we'd have weddings on the hour sometimes, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, because we couldn't have Mass afternoon. So sometimes those weddings were really bumped up against. You had to get people into church and out for a wedding in 45 minutes. That meant pictures as well. And then so the next wedding could seat their guests and get their pictures done and have the service of Mass.